show with me, Chris Goodrum, coming to you from a sunny Nottingham. Oh, nice to see a bit of sunshine and a little bit of warmth as well. Anyway, yes, okay, so last week's episode of the show, thank you, you guys for watching it. It's very much appreciated. Love the comments, and I think I've got a few to catch up on, so I'll catch up on them as soon as I can. But yeah, Tullamore Dew, that was a fun episode of the show. Like I said, first time I've looked at all of those bottlings all in one go, so even though some of them were quite old. Anyway, this week's episode of the show is well, time for some new stuff. Obviously we're well into March. The whisky industry has woken up, even though it's, you know, covered with a pall of doom and gloom and nobody buying whisky, and everybody's got financial problems, and then you've got the war in Iraq, and oh god, you look at, every time I switch my bloody phone on, all I get is yet another story of another business going into administration or what have you, and it's just unrelenting doom, it has to be said. I mean, fine if you like doom metal, I suppose, but god, you know, some of it's just anyway. So for half an hour, it's just kind of like, you know, half an hour or 40 minutes odd worth of light-hearted entertainment, and you know, we'll forget about all of these kind of things. So anyway, today's episode of the show, I'm looking at some new releases from a couple of independent bottling companies that I've grown quite fond of. Whisky Craft, as I introduced not so long ago, and Glaschu Spirits, who I think I introduced probably last year, I think it was, and as you know, I was immediately drawn to the artwork that Glaschu use on their labels. I love that sort of 1920s sort of Art Deco kind of thing. Yeah, obviously haven't been, well, was an artist myself once upon a time, so appreciate that kind of thing. And yeah, but of course, as we all well and truly know, labelling and packaging and all that kind of frippery is secondary to the juice in the bottle. And so far I've been impressed with, you know, more or less most of the releases from both Glaschu and from Whisky Craft. It certainly seems that both companies are sourcing good quality whiskies, and you know, they're not releasing huge amounts. They're sort of like, you know, buying good casks. Maybe they've bought the odd duff one and they've kind of like got shot of it. I hope that is the case, because, you know, nobody wants to sort of taste crap whiskey at the end of the day, do we? Anyway, hopefully there'll be no crap whiskies in today's episode of the show, but if there are, I will give you the reasoning why I think they're crap whiskies, but I don't think there are going to be any crap whiskies, so I think we can be fairly safe that all of these whiskies have their merits. So anyway, not a lot to tell you about the business, either of the companies, I think, because I've introduced them in the past, so I'm just going to crack on and introduce the lineup. Okay, so we're going to start off with a Whisky Craft 13-year-old Aultmore, first fill bourbon cask, bottled at 57.6%. Always nice to see Aultmore in American oak. I mean, I'm a big fan of Aultmore. I love Aultmore. It's got that lovely kind of rich, dense, almost meaty kind of character. I think I'm right in saying that Aultmore uses worm tubs, and the trouble is, of course, it does work really well with sherry, and too many indies kind of just blast the bloody stuff with sherry. So it's nice to see an Aultmore in an American oak cask, just left alone. Second bottling I'm going to be looking at is a 13-year-old Loch Lomond. This had been re-racked from an American oak cask into a cognac butt, or cognac cask, not butt, cask. Don't know what size cask. Could have been a hoggy, could have been a barrique, I don't honestly know. Mind you, they're about the same sort of size, aren't they? Barriques and hoggies, I believe. Anyway, this has been bottled obviously this year, and it's been bottled at 58.9%. Third bottling I'm going to be looking at is the first of the Glaschu Spirits bottlings. This is a brand new bottling from them. This is a 15-year-old Tormore, bottled at 50%. Again, American oak, with about two plus years finishing in first fill Oloroso. So we shall see how that one has turned out. Lovely colour on this one. Looks like it's almost been finished in a wine cask, but apparently not. This is a 17-year-old Auchroisk, bottled at 51.4% from Whisky Craft. American oak re-racked into ex Paolo Cortado, and yeah, bottled at 51.4%. Then two oldish. These were released last year from Glaschu Spirits. The first is a Peallach. Now you're probably going, what the bloody hell is a Peallach? Well, a Peallach is apparently a leche. No idea. Why do they do this? I don't understand. I mean, are they just being humorous? You know, because I know that sort of, Tobermory sells off their casks and allows them to be bottled as Tobermory or leche or what have you. Are they now just sort of like thinking, yeah, okay, well we'll start calling it a funny name? Anyway, this is the second Peallach that I've come across, but anyway, so it's a 10-year-old. It was distilled in 2014, bottled in June of 2025. It spent 9 years in a refill bourbon cask and 8 months finishing in a Zimoneth Spinola Oloroso cask. Now, Zimoneth Spinola are high-end sherry producers. We used to stock them for a little while, and really very, very good sherries. So bottled at 50%. And the penultimate bottling is a 5-year-old Ardnamurchan, bottled at 55%, wholly first fill Oloroso matured. Now I know the distillery has done a couple of full Oloroso bottlings, which have been really quite impressive. And I see there are a few independent bottlings of Ardnamurchan now cropping up. So this one was distilled in November of 2019 and bottled in June of last year. So have a little bit of peat in the finish. I'm looking forward to that. So let's kick off with the Aultmore. Okay, so 13-year-old Aultmore. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? As expected, dense, honeyed. It's actually got quite a gristiness to it, which is quite a surprise for a 13-year-old. I would have expected the gristiness to have kind of dissipated by now, but a bit of gristiness, lovely kind of pollen-heavy flower notes as well, acacia, honey. But there's a lovely nippiness there. It's almost like a grain-like nip. Yeah, there's a lovely kind of citric freshness, beautifully balanced, it has to be said. And it's classic. It is a classic sort of savoury, rich, well, not overly meaty, savoury, I guess, rather than meaty. Rich, densely honeyed. It's just a lovely whisky at the end of the day. And Aultmore is so overlooked, I think, by a lot of whisky drinkers. But when it's good, it's really good. And this is really good nose. Let's hope the palate's pretty good as well. Let's see what that's like. I mean, that gorgeous, juicy, full, rich, honeyed. I'm getting sort of acacia honey, manuka honey, a little bit of dried fruits, dried apricot, almost some sultanery notes. And again, it's got a lovely kind of citric note, not as nippy as it is on the nose, but it just balances up. It stops it becoming overly sweet. Also, the alcohol kind of helps stop that being overly sweet. A little bit of toffee and a sort of singed spices right on the finish. That is just a all-round beautiful whisky, it has to be said. It's a little masked, it's a little tight, so I'm going to put a little bit of water in to see what that does to it. That's really brought out that citric note on the nose. I'm getting tangerine and lemon and lime. That's really quite transformed it. I mean, it's not as kind of savoury now, it's more citric. So it's kind of one of these kind of whiskies where you take it as you like it, if you see what I mean. Let's see what the palate's like now. Yeah, the palate is quite citric now as well. It kind of follows on from what the nose was doing, and again, it's got the weight. It's a little simpler, I would say, but it's seriously juicy. I mean, my mouth is watering, and it's not watering because of the alcohol, it's watering because the fruit is just so juicy. So yeah, absolutely lovely whiskey. I think, me personally, I preferred it neat. I preferred the more rich, rounded, honey nature of it, but either way, you put a little drop of water with that and it just changes it completely, and not necessarily changes it for the better or the worse, it just changes it. And I love whiskies that do that. They're really fun, so good stuff. Let's move on to the 13-year-old Loch Lomond. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? That's actually quite complex. It's kind of subtly complex, if you know what I mean. It's kind of one of those kind of noses where you go, yeah, and then you go back to it, and it's unfunky. I mean, it's really clean, it's fresh, it's got some lovely fruitiness to it. It's got an almost kind of grain-like note, white rose oil, Turkish delight, subtle cognac-y apple, touch of vanilla, lemon. But it's, and that's the thing is, I've had so much Loch Lomond of recent, which is just weird and funky and sort of off the wall. It's kind of really nice to sort of suddenly come across an unfunky Loch Lomond, because you suddenly just go, oh, hang on, Lomond isn't just all about this weird stuff that they release. It actually produces quite a pleasant, easygoing Highland spirit. I mean, yeah, okay, the distillery looks like a tin shed, but, you know, this is just a delightful whiskey, it has to be said. Let's sort of pass on. Heavier, oilier, richer, more of that kind of rose Turkish delight note coming through. It's got quite a savoury character as well, you know. Well, again, not quite meaty, but savoury. And again, it's not funky, it's not weird, there's no peat, it's kind of actually really nice. Quite minerally, masked on the finish. It's not a huge amount of oak. There's a bit of oak on the nose. I'm not getting quite so much cognac on the palate. There's a little bit of oxidised fruit note there, but it is mainly quite tight. I mean, it is almost 60% ABV, so there's not really much in the way of a finish. So I'm going to put a little drop of water and see what that does to it. Okay, so that's brought out a little bit more of the American oak, the vanillins. It's got some baked apples still got a nice freshness to it, maybe not quite so complex, but yeah, still it's a lovely nose. And you know, I almost said a lovely nose for a Loch Lomond. Well, I mean, and Loch Lomond does produce some nice spirit, but you know, like I said, it just seems to me that every time you get a Loch Lomond sample, even if it doesn't say Inchfad or Inchmurin or whatever, you know, it'll just say Loch Lomond, and you'll think, well, what am I getting here? You know, and it's sometimes they're a real funk fest, it has to be said. But this is really quite nice. So let's see what I've got on it. Sweeter. It's almost a little confected, it has to be said. It's got sweet apple, sweet apricot, and sweet Turkish delight. Again, it's got the simplicity. It's maybe not quite so minerally. It's not quite so much citric notes. It's fuller, quite oily. Yeah, I like it. Okay, I mean, it's one of these kind of whiskies. I remember when I first tasted it, I was kind of like in two minds. I wasn't really sure whether I really liked it or not, or should I say, liked it enough to want to sort of like, you know, put it on the shelf, so to speak. I mean, that's essentially at the end of the day when I'm tasting samples to you know, decide whether I want to stock them. It will either be a yep, definitely I really like that, or an absolute no, that ain't going on the shelf. But then sometimes you get these ones that you're kind of like, oh, I'm not really too sure about it, and you know, and you might initially feel one way, and then you sort of like think about it, and I write my tasting notes up, and I think, you know. But and this one was one of those ones where I wasn't really entirely sure about it. But I think the more I taste it, the more I enjoy it. And I think it, like I said, it's an unfunky Loch Lomond, and so, you know, that's the problem. Something with these funky Loch Lomans and funky Springbanks and funky whatevers. You know, there is a bit of a limited market here. You know, at the end of the day, and I often find myself saying to sort of customers, well, it's a nice whiskey, but it's a bit left field. You know, if you like left field whiskies, you know, but you know. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, that's a nice whiskey. Okay, so let's move on to the 15-year-old Tormore and see what those gives us on this end, shall we? Okay, so there's some obvious sherry notes there. We'll get that one out of the way. That herbal Oloroso kind of character. Poached fruit as well. I get berries, strangely enough. It's just one of those things. But there is some barley notes there, and there's a little bit of grassiness. And I mean, Tormore generally tends to be sort of like in that citric, grassy sort of spey end of the spectrum. This obviously has got more weight to it, but then that's being generated by the sherry casks, or the sherry cask, I would say. As a sort of kind of almost sort of puddingy, kind of plum pudding kind of note to it. A little bit of wood char, sherry butter, toffee. There's some slightly acerbic green fruit as the Tormore character tries to push through. It's just about balanced. It's kind of another one of those I'm not entirely sold on, but you know, kind of whiskies for me. Anyway, let's see what pans out. More sherry on the palate, soft, almost treacly, some nice toffee notes. The kind of the sherry sort of almost kind of runs out of steam on the mid palate, and the Tormore character kind of comes through. I'm getting the finishes, although slightly masked, quite sort of citric and grassy, and sort of has that lovely kind of sort of freshness, shall we say. Again, a slight berry note as well, which is a little bit unusual considering, you know, hasn't been anywhere near a wine cask. And your balance is okay, I think. You know, I like the fact that, you know, that the sherry runs out of steam. Good. I get some distillery character. I get some balance and progression. Let's put a little drop of water. I don't normally do that with 50% ABV because I don't think it really needs it. But that has actually really pushed back the sherry quite a bit. I'm getting more toasty American oak, and softer kind of Tormore kind of character. It's arguably slightly more simplistic because it has kind of removed the sherry element to a certain extent. But I kind of slightly prefer it without too much sherry. Anyway, let's see what it does like now. The palate is very much the same. More Tormore, very more tart, sort of almost astringent green fruits, green Speyside fruits, green apple, slight gooseberry kind of note. Minerals. Again, it's more kind of spirit focused, and the sherry is practically sort of completely disappeared, which I'm not going to complain about too much. So yeah, on the balance of things, I kind of quite like this. I like the fact that it's going to appeal to, you know, customers that like sherried whiskies, but there is more to it than just the sherry. It's not one-dimensional. There is some distillery character coming through, and that's just what I want. You know, I don't want a kind of like a whiskey that's just been pummeled to death by the cask, whether it's wine, sherry, or American oak. I want balance at the end of the day, and I think on the balance of things, that has balance, if you see. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 17-year-old Auchroisk. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Now that is a sherry monster. Lots of dry grape, treacle, poached fruit, pears, fig, plum, raisins, sherry spice, coffee. I don't really get any Auchroisk. Auchroisk again is kind of in a sort of a style similar to Tormore, Tormore, what am I talking about? Tormore, in that it has that sort of green space-eyed fruit kind of grassiness to it. But I will give the nose has vibrancy and intensity, but I'm really not getting any distillery character whatsoever. It's all sherry, and it's not really my kind of cup of tea, it has to be said. There's a kind of almost youthful burnt biscuity kind of note as well. You know, I mean, you can tell that it's not Oloroso. It doesn't have the herbalness that Oloroso has. So I guess that's interesting from if you're into the sort of like the nuance of sherry character. Anyway, let's see what the palate gives us. Pretty much what the nose was saying. It is a treacly, sherried monster at the end of the day. Fig, prune, coffee, dried fruit, you know, all that kind of wood characteristics. No character from the distillery whatsoever. I don't get any inkling of Auchroisk or spirit whatsoever. It is 100% sherry. I think this probably spent a little bit far too long, personally, in the Peallach, but there you go. There are going to be people that, you know, customers that sort of really do like that. There's a little bit of a bitterness. I don't think it needs any water, to be honest with you. I mean, it is 51.4. Oh, I'll put a little drop of water with it, just for the hell of it anyway, just to see what happens. Not really made a great deal of difference, to be honest with you. It's pretty much the same. It's maybe a little simpler. Let's see what it passes like. Yeah, much the same. Sherry, and although it's 17 years old, I'm getting this youthful youthful cereal note kind of. It doesn't feel 17, but then I can't really taste the spirit, so I can't really make a complete informed judgment on the spirit itself. I mean, it's clean. I mean, there's no off notes, no blemishes. I mean, it's a good cask, you know, so, you know, Sonny has picked a good cask here, but for me, it's not kind of, you know, floating my boat, and these types of whiskey probably will never do. It's just a bit too much sherry and, well, a bit too much sherry. Okay, so let's move on to the Peallach. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Medicinal, really medicinal, very medicinal. Very medicinal for Leche, it has to be said. Very peppery, medicinal. I'm probably going to say medicinal an awful lot, I think. Smoked meat, again, classic kind of Tobermory Leche kind of meatiness, and a balanced sherried note. It's got some nice kind of dried fruits. There's some salt. Yeah, I mean, that's good sherry that it's been finished in, and 8 months was, for me, just about right, it has to be said. A little bit of honey, a little bit of barley as well. The peat is, like I said, quite medicinal. Yeah, I like it. It's got that kind of wildness on one, but the sherry on one hand, and the sherry is kind of just taking a bit of an edge off. There's a nice saltiness, and you know, I mean, I don't know what it is, but ever since I kind of like, you know, elevated Lecce from the Axis of Evil, I seem, or Tobermory from the Axis of Evil, I just seem to be coming across a lot of really nice Tobermory. No, Lecce. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just sort of like, you know, was there something in the air? That's what I wonder. You know, who knows? But no, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I've told you more often than not about my belief on the cut points and all that kind of stuff, and this is where Lecce should always be, and you know, now we have it. Now I can basically say, look, a good Lecce, without people falling over and going, oh my god, he said a good Lecce. Anyway, I'm going to taste it. Rich, meaty, savoury, medicinal. It's got that kind of Stoischer-like kind of green pepper note going on. Maybe that's why they called it Peallach. Maybe because they thought, oh well, this is kind of like Lecce, but not Lecce. It's more like Bunnahabhain. I mean, who knows? God knows what. Who knows what goes through people's heads at distilleries? I have no idea. I have no idea what goes through my head half the time. I mean, this is kind of stream of consciousness stuff. I sort of open my gob and stuff comes out. It's got a lovely complexity. I love this whiskey, I really do. It's balanced, it's got the medicinal kind of peaty character with some nice rounded sherry character, and it's balanced, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And it's got a meatiness, and it's kind of, you know, it's just a really good whiskey at the end of the day. It's like, you know, you know, the guy Paul at Glaschu, you bought a bloody good cask. Hopefully they've bought more than one cask, and they've got a few more of these stashed away, because that is really, really nice. It's got a lovely intensity, and I love the label as well, and it's like kind of like, well, bloody winner, chicken dinner. Right, okay, so on to the final whiskey of the afternoon, morning. Well, we're closer to afternoon than we are morning, shall we say, unlike last week's episode of the show, which was like kind of practically done at about 10 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, we're not brewed for breakfast, thankfully. Anyway, so this is Glaschu's Ardnamurchan. That's a big sherried nose. Silky, almost winey, dried fruit, red, black dried fruit, raisins, sultanas, earth, animals. You know, it kind of has this natural rawness of character. It's kind of peat and sherry, I suppose, and they make sort of lovely bedfellows, it has to be said. Gosh, it's just silky, but it's raw. It's kind of balanced in an odd kind of way, if you like. There's a little bit of rose Turkish delight, there's a bit of youthfulness. It's just all adding to the sort of like intensity, it has to be said. And this is the thing, you know, there is distillery character to a certain extent because it's quite peated, and it's kind of like with Islers that are heavily sherried. It's kind of peat and sherry, really. There's a little toffee, there's a little butter, there is some gristiness, there is some barley notes, there's a little bit of American oak. So, you know, on the whole, even though it is, and as you can see from the colour, pretty damn dark and pretty damn sherried, there is an inkling of balance there. There is some distillery character coming through. I mean, if you say that the character is quite peated, which, you know, this is obviously, I would guess, a cask of, or casks of probably more heavily peated Ardnamurchan. I mean, as you know, Ardnamurchan tends to makes peated and unpeated spirit, and then blends the two together to get a kind of a kind of a midpoint, a bit like sort of what Paul John does. So I imagine this is probably peated cask, I think, because it's really got the intensity, as we said. Anyway, let's see what that's on. Animally, raw, intense, earthy, manure peat, big sherry. It's a big whiskey. It's got, you know, it's up there, it's in your face. But it's silky as well. It's got a softness, a smoothness, lots of dried fruit, lots of animally peat, a touch of tar, some pepper, a little bit of barley coming through right on the finish, a little bit of toffee as well. I mean, it's intense. I mean, it is really a whiskey that you kind of remember, it has to be said. A little bit of almost kind of black pepper. I'm going to put a little drop of water and see what that does to it. Less keen on it now, it has to be said. The kind of peat has almost evaporated. It's kind of more soft sherry and a bit of barley as well. It's kind of a bit, it's lost the kind of edge, it's lost the intensity. It's easier to live with. I mean, but the palate is, I mean, even though it's what, 55%, really wasn't particularly masked. I mean, that sherry kind of sweetness kind of, I guess, was kind of offsetting that kind of the alcohol. So it passed by. Right, so it's knocked back a lot of the sherry. I'm getting more youthful spirit. It's got an edge to it, I suppose. Less animally, less peated, less fun, really, at the end of the day. Less sherry as well. I mean, I should be revelling in that, but it's somehow kind of, I wouldn't say compromised it. It's just sort of like less intense and less sort of like, you know, and part of the attraction, I guess, of Ardnamurchan, and certainly sort of like, you know, heavily sherried Ardnamurchan, is the kind of rawness and the intensity, and when you put the water with it, it just kind of like removes that intensity, and it's all kind of nice, and it really shouldn't be. It should be kind of like, you know, screaming at you, it has to be said. And so neat. I'm in there completely, absolutely brilliant whiskey. Water, yeah, don't bother. Yeah. So that's today's episode of the show. Firstly, big thank you to both Sonny and to Paul for the samples for today's episode of the show. As I've said on numerous occasions, if it wasn't for, you know, the support of you guys and sort of independents and distilleries sending me samples, and then there wouldn't be an episode of the show. And like I said, I kind of got to this point now where I don't have to stick stuff on the shelf. You know, if you want to send me samples, brilliant. If you don't, you don't. It's just kind of the way it is. Anyway, so the Aultmore. I mean, I thought that was a lovely Aultmore, classic Aultmore. And you know, if you've never tasted Aultmore, you never had Aultmore, just buy a bottle of this, because it is just classic Aultmore. It's a really nice whiskey at the end of the day. The Loch Lomond, yep, like the Loch Lomond. Unfunky Loch Lomond. It took me a while to get round to liking it, because it was kind of like almost a kind of like, where's the funk, you know, and one just sort of like, you know, gets to that point where you almost expect a bit of weirdness from Loch Lomond. The Tormore, yeah, I like the Tormore. It was balanced, it wasn't overly sherried, there was some Tormore character. So at the end of the day, I'm down with that, as they say. Yo, you bro, as they say. Anyway, moving on to the oh, fuck's sake. Fuck. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to both Paul and to Sonny for the samples for today's episode of the show. your support is very, very much appreciated. The Aultmore I thought was exceptionally good, really, really nice, just classically Aultmore. If you've never had Aultmore, I would certainly recommend that particular bottling. The Loch Lomond I thought was good. You know, I mean, like I said, you know, I've been so used to sort of like funky Loch Lomonds, it was almost kind of coming out of left field to have a clean and unfunky Loch Lomond. So really, really nice. The Tormore, I thought the Tormore was balanced. Yeah, the sherry finishing was just about right, and so I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. The Auchroisk, that had strayed too far into the sherry for my liking, it has to be said. Good clean sherry nevertheless, but just too much sherry and not enough distillery character. The Peallach, the Ledaig, yeah, really, really good. Balanced, you know, almost kind of medicinal, really intriguing, and just an all-round really, really good whiskey. And the Ardnamurchan, yep, okay, it's kind of, you can argue it's peat and sherry, which it actually was, but you know, it was okay. There was balance there at the end of the day. I mean, it had distillery character, and I almost got some barley notes coming through as well. So I'm quite happy to sort of like stick that on the shelf, and I love the label as well. I mean, that's really cool. So yeah, there you go. That's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope some of these may well have piqued your interest, and if they're available in your area, then I would certainly recommend sort of picking up a bottle. And if you live locally, or you know, buy a bottle from Gauntlet's, for God's sake. It's all doom and gloom at the moment, so I need your sales. Okay, you know, that's the hard sell. You know, get your wallet open and buy some of these whiskies at the end of the day. So anyway, right, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I've really, really enjoyed it. I have another indie episode of the show for you next week, with hopefully some really intriguing stuff, new stuff. You know, because we're in the new stuff time, shall we say. Anyway, all that's left to say is good afternoon, and well, we're closer to afternoon than we are morning, but we're not quite afternoon yet. But anyway, good afternoon and good dramming.